I'm scrolling through my Twitter timeline and I see this page that goes by Zig Francasi. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Sorry about that, but at Zig Francasi. And he posts this. The buzzards tell me the Bills may be aggressive in trying to move up in the NFL draft and may move a veteran or two in the process. Next few weeks will be interesting. I gotta say right now, Justin, I gotta ask you right now, does that surprise you that the Bills would, if this is true by Zig, does that surprise you? And if it is true, who do you see the Buffalo Bills moving on from? Because this is a pretty complete team. I don't think there's any bad players on this team. Could you upgrade in some positions? Yeah, of course, but in terms of players and who they are as people, I love every single person on this roster. So if you're Brandon Bean and if this is true, who are you moving on from? And what are you moving on from to get? What's the opportunity cost?
So I guess this one's challenging to me because it's so vague, right? And
Right.
I don't doubt that there could be some truth to it, or like when the Bills are going to their drawing board, they're like, "What if this situation came up where we are offered, this pick for player X and this pick?" Um, but it's just referring to in the draft veteran players, so in
Mm.
my mind this immediately goes to like doomsday scenarios of like, well, are we talking about Diggs, like a more moderate something I could see happening? Are we talking about Tremaine Edmonds? But my mind immediately goes to like we're like trying to get up to top 15 pick to go after somebody, so we have to
Hmm.
trade one of these pieces. But when you leave it as vague as veteran, you know maybe the Bills have their eyes on a couple running backs and Singletary's on the block. So there's a whole just myriad of situations that,
Hmm.
with how vague this is, doesn't really help me. The one I kind of concocted in my mind to your question of like, if I'm Brandon Bean and this situation is true, um, in my mind it could conceivably be Tremaine Edmonds. I
Mm.
don't. I feel like the Bills love him more than even like his most staunch fans love
I,
him.
you know, I gotta interrupt you real quick, and just to say that Tremaine Edmonds is probably the most polar polarizing player that the Buffalo Bills have right now. You either hate him or love him, and I'm not so sure why. Like this is a young kid. He's very. I mean, we're significantly older than him. I'm not saying like by leaps and bounds like 10 years older than him, but this
Eh,
is a young guy.
I'm close.
Ceiling, his ceiling is so high, and I'm telling you, every time when he's clean in front of him, he does big things. Like I like him. I'm always a half glass full kind of person, but like it just seems like everyone wants when there's an opportunity to jump on Tremaine, people will always be there, and it's just kind of like, come on, guys, like I
Ah,
get where you're coming from, but like he's not bad. You could do significantly worse than a guy like Tremaine Edmonds. And my fear is if the Bills do move on from a guy like Tremaine Edmonds, if you move on from anyone on this roster, aren't you creating a hole at that position? Like this, like I said, this is a pretty complete team. I find it hard to believe if you move any piece that it's not going to create a a hole that Brandon Bean now has to fix. So I don't know. It's going to be a
so
tough one if you ask me.
so I don't disagree with a lot of what you said. The reason Tremaine Edmonds kind of pops into my mind is some of the consistency. We haven't really seen him be kept clean and be able to play his position the way it's more intended to be. But what
And
I'm
that's not his fault.
right. But what I'm kind of looking at in this situation is you gave Milano the contract. You've restructured him this offseason, so he's not going anywhere. And if you start looking at, you still have, even if there's small questions about Tremaine Edmonds, you're about to have to give him a bigger contract than you just gave to Milano.
I think like $12 million, if I'm not mistaken, fully guaranteed.
Yeah, I would say that's on the low end of the annual value, just based on how young he is and his length, his draft pedigree, all of that. So in my mind, it's just kind of like, okay, money's going to start getting tight. Maybe we have a couple lingering questions about Tremaine Edmonds, so why don't we hit the reset button on that? We'll draft somebody this year, have them on the rookie pay scale, look at like a Nakobe Dean, maybe Devin Lloyd. But I think it's again, I don't think it's one of these players that's kind of, my worm brain goes right to one of our, entrenched starters. So that's kind of the theory that my brain cooked up. But again, I think this is much more likely that it's like one of the more fringe starters, and we're moving up into like the third round, something like that.
Right, because the message itself, the tweet, doesn't even specify which round.
Right.
So we always want to assume it's the first round. Well, Brandon Beane, he's been on record like, if I see a guy, he's my guy, I want to go and get him. And he's done that in multiple rounds. Now, there's the debate out there right now, like, how many draft picks can the Buffalo Bills really roster? And the real answer is here, it depends. We don't really know what the Buffalo Bills and Brandon Beane and company are going to do with said draft picks. We could trade away players moving up. And I'm not going to lie, when I read this, it gave me more Cordy Glenn in late round draft picks, late round first round draft picks, so we could move up to number 12. And we eventually used that so we could get our guy in Josh Allen. So I don't think that Brandon Beane is necessarily going to go, well, maybe. Well, this is the fun part, right?
Going top 10 for Sauce?
Bruh. That'd be insane. But, then we pretty much have to trash the first part of this podcast where we talk about, Stephon Gilmore coming in. Because then if you get a guy like Sauce, well, could you imagine, dude? Sauce, White, Gilmore, Saucy White Gills. Oof.
We're going to have to work on that.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to work on Saucy White Gills. We'll figure it out, guys.